Okay, we're good, Sharon.
All right.
Do you want a mic left on?
Give us a little Q&A start. Make sure that they know it's, press to talk. They should.
Okay.
That's what I thought.
Usually city council, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's pretty easy. If multiple are on at a time, is that going to be a problem?
No.
I don't have a problem with that.
That's because the agenda item is a public comment. So if they go public comment on the agenda item,
They usually announce and say they'll take public
Mic check 1 2.
comment. It's not on the agenda.
Does that seem about the same level, Phil?
But I don't know about PSC. That's city council.
Can you stay on? Oh,
bonus.
Mic check 1 2. Check, check, check.
can you maybe walk this one along?
Mic check 1 2. Check, check, check. Right, speakers okay? Okay.
Maybe just some speed.
How about now? Is this more balanced, Sharon? Check 1 2.
Thank you.
I've got this fancy TV system in my house, and it's the worst investment I ever made. This morning, she said,
This is the Portland Planning and Sustainability Commission. It's the October 10th meeting. On the agenda today, we'll have items of interest from commissioners, followed by the director's report. Then the consent agenda. On the consent agenda today is consideration of the minutes from September 26th. And right-of-way number 8304 at Northwest Roosevelt between Northwest 29th and 30th. That's a vacation request. That will be followed by the hauler's franchise review. That is a briefing. And that will then be followed by the code reconciliation project, which is also a briefing. Are there items of interest? Go ahead, Katie, and then Eli.
Okay, I just wanted to report that I went to the National Community Reinvestment Coalition meeting that they had recently here in Portland, and was supporting Karen Gray as she spoke about the Gateway Education Workforce Development Center that is so much of something that East Portland is really interested in. It's in the Portland Plan, and it is something that I am going to try and speak about as often as I can. So it was really interesting to hear her speak, and it is possible that we will be able to use the funds that the National Community Reinvestment Coalition actually uses the Reinvestment Act to use money that banks need to invest in their community but often forget to. So it is a organizing organization, and I'm really interested in seeing if that's something that we can use to get this wonderful Gateway Education and Workforce Development Center rolling.
Another announcement, I have some flyers from the Build Small, Live Large Summit I mentioned last time, and also coming up in May is the Congress of New Urbanism National Gathering that I've gone to a couple times and highly recommend it. The woman who leads the CNU now has brought a lot more youth leadership into the organization and diversity, and a focus on reusing existing cities more so than greenfield development. So using better the land we already have. So I've gone to a couple of these, and they're a good summit. I recommend if you're thinking about going to Savannah, Georgia.
Thank you. Any other items of interest? Not seeing anything. Susan, Director's Report?
Fun new things we got here.
I know, fancy.
I guess first announcement is that with any luck, not next meeting, but the meeting after, we will be in this room, but over there, and this wall will disappear magically, and we'll have this whole new thing set up so that Julie does not have to climb around, and all the other folks that help us get all of this information transmitted and on live TV for everybody, that will happen more automatically, and it'll be a lot easier to do. And so I know this has been a long time in coming, and I appreciate your patience and moving this around. So next time we'll actually be meeting back at CH2M building one more time, and then we'll be back here, hopefully for good. One other update is just that we were having a discussion planned for the 24th on deconstruction and looking at potentially moving the date out and having that discussion here about should we move that out to the 1930s or so. At the same time, Commissioner Udaley has put out the idea for a new rule related to lead abatement, and they will be discussing that, and that would actually affect all of sort of the deconstruction industry and demolition industry. So we think we want to let that settle first, and then we'll come back and take a look at potential for enlarging the ordinance, and so that would probably happen around the first of the year. I think that's it.
Okay, thank you. Consent agenda, do I have a motion?
Move adoption of the consent agenda?
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Eli. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None opposed, so that passes. So next up is the Haulers franchise review. This is a briefing. Welcome.
Chair Schultz.
You have to push the button.
Oh, I did it too.
That's really exciting.
Yes. Chair Schultz, Commissioners. I'm Bruce Walker, the Solid Waste and Recycling Program Manager for the City of Portland. I'm here to give an update. Along with me is Ariane Sperry, a coordinator leading the franchise review project. We were last here at the end of June to discuss steps of our residential franchise review process. The residential system is single family through fourplex that we oversee haulers who provide services, recycling, garbage, and composting collection services. We, after the commission passed along recommendations to City Council, Council unanimously adopted us moving ahead with a franchise review process that launched at Council on August 3rd. We're here today to give a brief update on the process and timeline, and I'm going to turn it over to Ariane to provide that.
Thank you. So I'm going to just give a little update as I think the timeline that we laid out for you guys last June has shifted a little bit. A little reminder on the background since it's been a while since we came and talked to you, and then updates on our progress so far. So as Bruce mentioned, on August 3rd, City Council launched a review of the franchise agreement that governs the collection of residential garbage and recycling. and the franchise agreement requires that we report back to council by the end of January. So we had a PSC hearing scheduled for November 28th, but we decided to shift the timeline to allow for more thorough engagement and analysis of the complex issues that we have encountered so far. So we canceled the November 28th hearing, and instead we're going to update PSC on December 12th with a proposed timeline. And so we will report back to council as required at the end of January and share our process and our progress. And at that time, we'll request additional time to develop a recommended course of action. So that's kind of the big timeline update. In terms of background, when council adopted the resolution launching the review process, they also adopted a set of guiding principles to provide focus for our review, which direct staff to evaluate how well the franchise advances climate action plan goals, ensures cost-effective, safe, and environmentally sound operations, provides exemplary customer service, and helps develop a resilient and equitable system. So equity is a new area of focus for us in the franchise review, and most of the update I'm going to give today relates to our progress in that area. So as a reminder, there are two guiding principles that relate to equity. We want to increase participation of women and minority workers in the franchise, and we want to reduce barriers to economic opportunities for minority-owned and women-owned companies. So I'm going to talk to you about the consultant team, stakeholder engagement thus far, a workforce survey, and research that's underway, and then also provide an update on the target operating margin analysis that we're conducting. So to help us apply the equity-related principles of the franchise review, we hired a consultant team to help us engage the stakeholders, to conduct research and develop and analyze options and recommendations. And as I said, it's specifically related to the two pieces, the increasing workforce diversity and reducing barriers to economic opportunities for minority and women-owned companies. They have, the team has completed interviews with many of the stakeholders that testified at the August 3rd City Council hearing. And so those are going well. We've learned a lot and have a number of ideas that are marinating. We're also developing a broader list of stakeholders to invite to participate and planning a group meeting for stakeholders to discuss the options that have been brought forward during the interviews. And BPS has also partnered with Work Systems, Inc., our regional workforce investment board, to develop and launch a demographic survey of the franchisees' current workforce. We want to establish a baseline, and then we can set goals and recommended actions for increasing minorities and women in the workforce over time. This approach is dual purpose and will also help franchisees in their efforts to find qualified applicants, which they've expressed has been difficult for them over time. And so they've indicated a real enthusiasm to participating in this effort, which has been great. So the survey is currently out, and haulers will be submitting their survey results this week. Through the interviews, we've learned a lot about the barriers to economic opportunity in this industry for minority and women-owned companies. We've gathered an array of options, and the consultant team is researching best practices in other jurisdictions and other industries, and assembling a set of potential scenarios. And BPS staff has also met with the city attorney's office to understand the implications of any changes to the current franchise agreement, as well as for any new approach that we might pursue. And finally, in assessing the target operating margin, we contracted with an economist who's conducting an analysis that will look at the target operating margins of peer jurisdictions, as well as similar industries. And then also doing an approach where he's calculating the required revenue using the methodology that was developed by the Washington Utilities and Transportation Commission that they use statewide for solid waste and recycling. So that's just a quick update. Lots of progress, more to come on December 12th, and we're happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
Thank you very much. We have questions? Wow, you blew us over with just such a thorough briefing. Yes, Bruce.
I have one other item that's affiliated with not just franchise review, but next steps that our program's undertaking is a truck safety pilot project that we are launching, that later this month there will be side guards installed on a number of collection vehicles in Portland that will help address some of the issues with cyclist, pedestrian collisions that have occurred. And so we're very pleased at the response of haulers of getting involved in this project, and we will report back in the future. But we are launching a pilot program, and it will begin later this month.
Great, good to hear. So I applaud the extension of the timeline. That's fabulous. Thanks for doing that and taking the time to really do a thorough, diligent job. And unless Chris wants to say it, I'll leave it to him. I know somebody's going to certainly applaud the side guards.
Yeah, I had a chance to meet with Bruce and some of his staff yesterday and get briefed on the pilot, and very much appreciate the team taking this on. We're not at a regulatory stage yet. We're going to do it on all vehicles, but we're going to do some learning, see what it takes to accomplish this, and I very much appreciate a very positive step forward.
One last chance. Any final thoughts or questions? No, thank you very much. Appreciate your time today. Thanks. Next item is the Code Reconciliation Project. In a minute, because Julie needs a minute.
I got a space filler for a minute.
We're early. It's okay.
Can I get a space filler comment?
Sure. Eli would like to have a word.
On the consent agenda, there was a right-of-way dedication in there that I was happy to consent to, but I would like to put in the record that this is a substantial amount of land that was just transferred, and I would encourage the city, once again, to look at a legal interpretation or maybe a change of state law so the city can actually sell right-of-way instead of providing it for the cost of the processing fee.
Okay. Thank you. Are you ready?
Sure.
Are you ready, Julie? Okay, we're good to go.
All right. Barry Manning, Planning and Sustainability staff, working on the Code Reconciliation Project. And today we're going to give you a briefing on the project and what's some of the highlights in this rather thick document that is pretty technical and full of a lot of code. So I've got a fairly long PowerPoint. I apologize for that. I'll try to click through it pretty quickly. It might look like it's animated if I do that fast enough, you know, like those old things you had when you were a kid. Just kidding. But I will try to go pretty quickly through it. I'm just going to try to hit the highlights of what I think are most significant topics that you might hear testimony on or that might be of interest to you because they result in some substantive changes. So having said that, I'll get going here. So what is the project and why are we doing it? If you recall, when we were doing the Code Planning and Sustainability Commission hearings on the mixed-use zones project, we had identified a long list of additional code provisions that needed to be tuned up and reconciled with the new code provisions because we were creating a whole new set of zoning, new palette of zones, and the code had references to existing zones and existing commercial zones throughout, and we needed to go back through. We knew at that point in time we needed to go back through and tune up the rest of the zoning code to sync it up with the new zones that we had created. We also created campus institutional zones and did some changes to employment, so there was a need to kind of go back and do that. And the Code Reconciliation Project is really the project that is doing that. So we're taking a look as thoroughly as possible through the zoning code and other city titles, including Title 18, Title 11, which is trees, and Title 32, which is signs, to tune it up and sync up all the regulations so that the code references are correct and we haven't created situations where we can't implement the code. So that's why we're doing it. What's affected by this, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of Title 33, which is the majority of the document that you have in front of you, but there's also zoning references in Title 11, which is trees, so we'll talk about that a little bit. Planning and Sustainability Commission has some purview and makes a recommendation about those code changes. Title 18, noise control, you don't have purview on that, but I'm just going to highlight that for you at the end of the presentation. And then Title 32, signs and related regulations, and the Planning and Sustainability Commission does have some authority to make recommendations to City Council on that. So that's what's affected by the code changes that we're proposing. And we're going to 3 review bodies. PSC, obviously, we're here today. We will also be briefing and holding a hearing with the Urban Forestry Commission. I have a briefing with them next Thursday and a hearing with them in about a month. I have a briefing with the Noise Review Board tomorrow evening, and then a hearing with them in about a month as well on the Title 18 issues. So 3 different boards and commissions. So first, what I'd like to do is outline the Title 33 amendments that you've got in front of you, and again, hit kind of some generalities and some highlights with what we're doing. And then I'll go into the other ones. Before I do that, any questions about the purpose of what the Code Reconciliation Project is before we dive into some of the detail? Nope. Okay, good. So just overall, and I'm happy to answer questions at the end or in the middle if we need to. We have multiple changes to a host of chapters in here that have more technical and minor kind of characteristics. We were changing titles of zones, substituting the most similar mixed-use zone for the existing commercial zones where that occurs, oftentimes just changing the term commercial to commercial mixed use, so really just tightening up the code in many respects. We've also gone through all of the code chapters where we had references to commercial zones and other elements that have development regulations and tried to amend them to provide consistency with the new zones. So an example of that might be where we, again, replaced references to the EX zone, which is being replaced by CM3 to indicate a CM3 zone would, the regulations would apply to a CM3 zone, and that occurs in plan districts and throughout other areas. In other areas, we've amended regulations to better align with the existing, or the adopted rather, employment and industrial zones, the E and I zones. So for instance, you might see some changes in square footage allowances for retail and residential uses throughout the code. So we've tried to align those.
Can I ask one quick question
Sure.
about the CM3 thing you mentioned? So in the Northwest Plan District, that's one of the places where the EX was marked out and changed to CM3.
Correct.
There are references to maps that aren't included in this. Do you just look online and those are the maps that would apply?
They are. We have not changed the maps at all. The maps would still be the same as what the current maps are. Yep. Most of them are technical. Some of them result in some changes to development allowances, and there are slight policy changes that might be at play with some of these. And what I'd like to do is highlight those that are most significant in the next several slides here, just to bring them to your attention. And happy to discuss any of those changes with you. Before I get underway, I do want to acknowledge staff that worked on this with me. It wasn't all 600 pages off my desk. Shannon Buno, our code editor, had a substantial hand in working through these amendments, and I really owe her a lot of thanks for working with us on that. And also John Cole, who was involved in the campus institutional work and helped in the initial screening of where we needed to make changes throughout the code. And then Steve Kuntz, who had a hand in the employment and industrial work as well, and had a hand in some of the work that we've done in this code reconciliation project with that regard. And I believe Steve and Shannon are here to answer any questions that might come up with that I can't answer with respect to the codes that they wrote. So anyhow, with that, I'm just going to walk you through some of the major highlights in this document. So the first set of significant changes, before I get underway, I want to also mention a large part of what we're doing here is amending the codes to conform to the inclusionary housing codes that were adopted in December of 2016. Those happened right after we reviewed the mixed-use zones and took that through City Council. And so what we're trying to do is there's several sections where we're amending the code that would be effective to implement the comp plan, the 2035 implementation amendments, to work in the inclusionary housing provisions. So you'll hear me mention that several times because that's occurred in multiple sections. The code language that we adopted is a slight variation on what I think the Planning and Sustainability Commission is seeing with regard to the Central City's approach to the inclusionary housing. So I'm going to mention it in multiple slides, but just be aware that a large portion of our work centered on that. So in the multi-dwelling zones, Chapter 33-120, we are amending it to conform to the new inclusionary housing approach. We're deleting the IR zone from this chapter because it's being included with the new 33-150 chapter that includes the campus institutional zones. And there are some maps that we're amending in Chapter 120 that are concurrent with work that you heard about in the map refinement process. There's some places where the 4-to-1 FAR-RH maps are being amended, and I'm going to show you these. And it's map 12011 on the left. That area that's highlighted is being added. Some areas are being deleted. I take that back. The map on the left is being deleted. So that area is going from RH to R1 as part of the map refinement project. The map on the right is substituting. Those areas are being applied RH 4-to-1 in the map refinement project, and the code reconciliation project is including these in the code section to correspond to the changes that you heard about with that. These maps are being added or renumbered. New map 120-18 is being added where some RH areas are being proposed for 4-to-1 FAR. The existing map 120-18 is becoming map 120-19, which is shown on the right. In the commercial mixed-use zones, we are amending the affordable housing bonus that we had lots of discussion on when we had our hearings to be consistent with the new IH approach. And essentially what's happening there is that if your project is required to do affordable housing because it meets the requirements for inclusionary housing or is voluntarily doing that, it's eligible to use the bonus FAR and bonus height limits up to the levels that are stated in the code. So we're not changing the maximum heights or the maximum FARs that are allowed in those zones. We're just essentially transitioning from a voluntary affordable housing bonus to the inclusionary housing bonus, which is now required if you have over 20 units. But essentially, the upper end of the limits of the floor area and the height remain the same as what we had talked about previously. We're also changing slightly the code provision for the bonus for the affordable commercial space, which is still being worked on by Prosper Portland or Portland Development Commission. We've had several meetings, and a couple of the Planning and Sustainability Commissioners have been participating in those, Teresa being one of them, Andre being another one, and Chris also participating to some degree in that. We've got another meeting coming up, and what they are finding is that the initial 25% rent reduction target that we had put into the zoning code is not always a workable solution for providing affordable commercial space. So they're exploring a broader range of trade-offs, if you will, in exchange for the public benefit, or public benefit trade-offs in exchange for the additional FAR, and they're working on an administrative rule right now to codify all of that stuff. So they've requested that we actually take out the percentage, reduced rent percentage here, and let them codify that as one of the options in an administrative rule that they'll be developing. So that's what we're proposing in the zoning code. We're also reestablishing design review for self-service storage uses in the CE zone. That was a oversight in our initial effort, and we'd like to reintroduce that here. So that is a somewhat significant change. We're going to talk a little bit more about self-service storage in a minute. In the employment and industrial zones, we're amending again to conform to the inclusionary housing bonus approach where it applies. And then we are doing some work to the buffer overlay. We're actually removing it, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But most of the changes in the employment and industrial zones are centered around changes to setbacks and landscaping where E&I zones are adjacent to residential zones. We're removing the buffer overlay, and we're building in standards into the base zones that apply consistently in more situations to try to buffer between employment and industrial businesses and residential businesses. So I'll talk a little bit more about that, and I'll show you the buffer overlay zone changes in a moment. That's a significant change here. And finally, in campus institutional zones, the CI2 zone will now allow some market rate housing, and so we're adding the inclusionary housing bonus approach for housing that would be developed in the CI2 zone that's not associated with a campus or an institution. In the 200 section of the zoning code, there are several changes that are affected here. I mentioned earlier a change to self-service storage. Not only are we proposing to add the design review requirement back in the commercial zone section to trigger that. But in the self-service storage, we're proposing to take out the somewhat antiquated design guidelines that were in that section that are applied to self-service storage, and apply either the guidelines, the design guidelines that are in place for a particular area that might exist. So if it was Central City, it would be the Central City design guidelines, or if it were in another section of town or another part of town, it would be those guidelines. And where there are no guidelines specific to a district, apply the community design guidelines. This was a request from BDS and the district liaison planners to really provide a better and updated design path for these facilities. As I mentioned earlier, we are amending the buffer overlay zone. This is pretty significant. It is, as I said earlier, we're removing the buffer overlay zone and amending the employment and industrial zones to apply setbacks and landscaping where those properties are adjacent to residential properties. We had done this with the commercial mixed-use zones as part of the mixed-use zones project, if you'll recall. We had built in more extensive landscaping and buffering and limited exterior activities where they were adjacent to residential uses, trying to apply more even-handedly, if you will, buffering kind of standards where we had those adjacencies. And there was a request to look at that and see if that was possible as part of the reconciliation project to apply that to employment and industrial zones. So we have proposed to do that here. And what will result will be a removal of the buffer overlay from the map and the code. And this is the map that shows where those areas are applied. The red areas are the commercial zones where the buffer overlay was applied previously. Those have been taken off already as part of the, again, comp plan implementation. The blue areas that are highlighted here, let's see if I can, yeah, like down here and up here, East Columbia and North Portland areas are the areas where the buffer overlay is proposed to be removed from employment and industrial zones. And if you have questions at the end of this presentation, I could bring Steve up to go into more detail about that. So I'm going to walk through a number of different plan districts now and go over them very lightly, but I just do want to highlight the ones where we've made some significant changes that you might hear testimony on. We did send notices to property owners in these plan districts about changes that could affect their property. So you may hear, I haven't had a lot of phone calls to date on that, but we were still a couple weeks away from the hearing, so we may hear an increased number of questions later on. But the first one is the Columbia South Shore Plan District, 33515. And the changes here really are just to, again, make the allowances for retail more consistent with the base E&I zones, which reduce the size allowance to 20,000 square feet per use. And we are amending a few maps to conform to property lines. There's a couple of there's a sub-district in this plan district that had a line that was drawn not on the basis of property line boundaries, and we're updating that to conform to the property line boundaries. I have had a call on that, and I think the property owner understands that pretty clearly now. This is the old map here. And the new map, as you can see, has a little bit more tailoring right in this particular area to conform to property line boundaries and the differentiation between the industrial zones where this sub-district applies and the employment zones where it doesn't apply. The second map has similar adjustments to property line boundaries in certain areas, a little harder to see, but some in this area here. The East Corridor Plan District, which is along the Max line that goes out Burnside on the east side of town, east of I-205, has several changes in it. We're applying the inclusionary housing provisions and converting existing housing bonuses to the IH approach in this particular plan district. I should say overall, our approach in plan districts was to apply, we needed to apply the inclusionary housing provisions to them. Many of the plan districts were based on our, well, all of them were based on our old zoning scheme that often when we had CS and CM zones did not count, or CG zones did not count residential uses in floor area ratios. Now that we're doing that, we needed to kind of update that and sync them up. So where we didn't have floor area ratios specified, we needed to kind of figure out whether we needed to apply them. And then if we didn't have a bonus for housing as an offset for the IH, we might need to apply them. Where we had bonuses for housing already in plan districts, we took the approach to convert that bonus to an IH bonus by and large. We didn't provide a bonus on top of a bonus. We just converted the bonus to that. So in the case of East Corridor, there were some housing bonuses already in there, and we converted those bonuses to be IH bonuses. Again, in this plan district, we replaced CX zone references in a sub-district that the plan district includes to refer to the CM3 zone so that those provisions would still apply. And then we amended some maps to simplify the approach in this plan district, and but we did not change the height limits that are allowed in the area by and large, nor the FAR, but we did rely more on base zones to implement them. In comparing the maps, it looked like the base zones were fairly equivalent to what was proposed on what had been proposed on the FAR maps that are in this plan district, and we felt that it was a cleaner approach to just use the base zone. So I'm going to show you how those maps play out, and this is kind of consistent in the way the other maps you'll look at work too. The old map is on the left, and the new map is on the right. So the existing map had a fairly complex way of showing height limits, and those height limits really corresponded to zoning lines, so different base zones. This area here, which is a pedestrian district, had specific and much higher height limits than other areas, largely the RH zone and also some now CM3 zone. So what we did was we maintained the height limit in those areas that are RH and CM3, or largely RH and CM3, but relied on the base zones for these other areas where we had this more complex pattern of height limits. And we believe that the net effect is that the height limits are still maintained in those areas. This is the eastern part of that plan district. The same approach applies here. So in this area around 148th Avenue, we have some higher height limits that corresponds to that dark gray area, 100 feet in this area, and also at 162nd. And again, those are in RH and I believe CM3 zones. And these other areas that have a patchwork of height limits that are really corresponding to a zoning pattern, we just said apply the base zones. Similarly with FAR, we took a similar approach here. Again, maintaining higher FARs in this area around the MAX station and in this pedestrian district, so that stays the same. Outside of that, we're relying more consistently on base zones. There were a couple of small commercial zones there that had low FARs where we specified some minimums and some higher FARs, but they've been superseded by the new zoning, CM zoning pattern that we have now. This is showing the eastern part of that. In the Gateway Plan District, we are doing just a couple of minor changes. We are applying the new retail use size allowances to the E&I zones where those exist, and we're also applying inclusionary housing provisions and converting the existing bonus structure to the inclusionary housing. Gateway has areas where there's up to 3-to-1 FAR bonuses allowed, and those would be allowed through the inclusionary housing program. Hayden Island is one that I think is a more significant change and is one you might hear comment on. We haven't heard anything from the property owner yet, but one of the characteristics of the Hayden Island plan is that the area where the Jansen Beach Supercenter is was planned at a time when light rail was expected to happen in that area in the not too distant future, and there was a special planning project associated with it to develop appropriate floor area ratios and appropriate levels of development given constraints on the freeway and several other things. The upshot of that is that the floor area ratios actually remained pretty low, but a significant amount of development was allowed in the area, and it was expressed as purely a square footage number of somewhere in the range of 1 million square feet in each of the sub-districts that apply there. If you look at those areas, and they were all under generally one ownership, if you look at those areas and you look at the gross area and how much development was allowed, it could be converted to a floor area ratio, which is the way the rest of our code is set up and all of the other plan districts are set up. So we are proposing to change that pure square footage regulation to a floor area ratio in these areas. We believe 0.75 to 1 is the appropriate floor area ratio, given the size of the area and the amount of development that would really actually allow, and the kind of characteristics of the ownership pattern. There also is a bonus for housing that basically allows you to go double the floor area ratio in this area. So we're converting that to the inclusionary housing bonus in this area. And just to show you where I'm talking about, this is the map. There's no map change proposed for Hayden Island, but this is the area that we're talking about. So this is I-5 Freeway here, and this is the area just to the west of I-5 that where these changes in floor area would be predominantly focused. Hollywood Plan District was developed with a lot of existing CS zone and had specific height limits, and different FARs applied for areas that were zone CX there, but the CS zones were assumed to include or allow housing above and beyond floor area ratios. So we're updating the Hollywood Plan District to apply a floor area ratio similar to what the plan stipulated in the CS zone. So we would get a 4 to 1 floor area ratio in the new CM2 zone that is substituting for the CS rather, and we're providing a 1 to 1 inclusionary housing bonus to offset the change there. So there is one where we are proposing a change. We're maintaining the same height limits that were allowed in the plan district already. We are applying the inclusionary housing provisions and converting any existing housing bonuses that would apply in Subdistrict A in areas that are Zone CM3 to the inclusionary provisions. And we are amending a map to remove bonus height associated with the CO1 zone, and I will show you that here.
So, Barry, can I ask a quick question
Sure.
on that? And I have a number of questions kind of related to this, but
Sure.
if I'm following what you were saying there, you're amending it to work with IH based on kind of what was already in the, converting it from the existing characteristics of that district.
Yeah.
There was a lot of work done to IH to figure out what actually financially perhaps made more sense than not. And so for instance, on this, is this a reduction in some of the bonus and height that we gave to other areas of similar characteristics due to the fact that the plan district was more restrictive?
I don't believe there's any areas where we're necessarily reducing that. The one place I would have a question about is, in Hollywood, this area here has a largely zoned CS currently and has a 65 to a 75 with bonus height limit. And we are applying a base 4 to 1 FAR, which is what would be allowed there currently. But the height limit would stay the same, but we're allowing an additional 1 to 1 FAR for inclusionary housing. So it's hard to make a complete direct translation between those two. This area where it's 45 and 65 is a little bit more clear because 45 feet is essentially equating to a 4-story building. A 4 to 1 FAR would entirely fill up that 45 square feet or 45-foot height limit, and the 5 to 1 FAR really relates to the 65-foot height limit allowance. Here, with a 65-foot base height allowance, I think you would have to do some housing and step into that bonus to really exercise that 65-foot height limit. So that's a little bit of a question there. Did we do additional financial analysis to make sure that we were, squaring with the inclusionary housing approach? We did not. The 4 to 1, 5 to 1 ratio here, so 4 to 1 base and a 1 to 1 bonus, is the same as what the RH zone at 4 to 1 FAR allowed. So we made an assumption that if it worked for RH, that it will work as well here. And it's also, on the top end, 5 to 1 FAR is the same as the CM3 zone. So we did some work on those when we did the mixed-use project and the inclusionary housing project. So I think we have some basis for the top end of those FARs.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
I think I'm following all that. So I guess where I'm going to push back on you as a little homework for when we see you next is if you could research maybe the planned districts that you feel do not kind of meet the intent of what we had outlined for how the IH bonus was going to work. So in other words, and I just can't remember, which is why I was asking you the question. If we were only giving 1-to-1 before as a bonus, great. But if we were giving 3-to-1 as a bonus, and now this area is only getting 1-to-1, I guess I have concern about whether IH is really going to work in that plan district now.
Okay.
And then I don't know what we do, but I think there's a discussion to be had there. Does that make some sense?
Sure, sure.
Okay, thanks.
So this might be an example of one where, and I guess this gets back to as I said, we didn't bonus on top of a bonus. So for instance, in this area, there were some places that were eligible for pretty significant bonuses, housing bonuses. So you would ultimately have an FAR of somewhere in the neighborhood of 7-to-1 if you exercise the full bonus. For the most part, I think that there's not a whole lot more FAR that could really be utilized there. So that's why we didn't go again, but I can give you a little bit more detail when we meet again, you bet. I did want to highlight the area here in the current map, which is currently zone CO1, which has a 30-foot height limit. We allowed an additional 5 feet if you were doing housing. And that is actually being replaced by the CM1 zone, if you recall. And the CM1 zone has a 35-foot height limit already and has a bonus built in for the housing. So we felt that it was appropriate to remove that height limit bonus just to allow the 35 outright by the base zone. Kensington Plan District, this one's a little bit more straightforward. We applied the inclusionary housing provisions in this plan district, and in some cases there are FARs mapped, and they didn't account for an inclusion or a housing bonus at all. So we allowed for a inclusionary housing bonus to offset in this particular case. Macadam Plan District is another one that is similar, although quite different in its characteristics. Macadam has a overall floor area ratio that's much lower than what's allowed by the base zones. It has a 2-to-1 floor area ratio allowed. And so as an offset for the inclusionary housing in this one, we added a bonus for inclusionary housing. And my comment on this is, and I think we've had some discussions about that in the past, that this might be a plan district that ought to be revisited in the future to see if the floor area allowances and things of that nature are in keeping with what our future vision for this area is. We talked about it a little bit when we were doing the comp plan as well. Markham Hill Plan District is a somewhat unique situation here. We're proposing to expand the plan district to include some adjacent properties that are proposed to be zoned to CM2 as part of the map refinement project, and you may recall hearing about these from Marty. And we're also creating a new subdistrict F in the plan district to identify those properties. And the reason we're doing this is that Markham Hill obviously is a attractor for trips and has there are concerns about the possibility of people creating commercial parking in the area adjacent to the Markham Hill area, which is highly regulated in terms of parking. The CM2 zone allows commercial parking outright. The CM1 zone that was originally proposed for this site does not allow commercial parking outright. And so in the transition from the council asked us to consider applying CM2 to some of these sites. As that occurred, there was some concern about the possibility that folks would utilize commercial parking opportunities up there. And this amendment here is really designed to limit commercial parking opportunities in this CM2 area while allowing the development potential that the CM2 allows. So what we're doing is amending the map to include this new area, which again is subdistrict F, and it's generally properties that are going to be zoned CM2. And so we've just updated all of the plan district maps to include this area. I don't know if there's another one. No, there is not. Include that area, and the regulations within the plan district would apply to this area, which include a prohibition on commercial parking. That fairly clear to folks? Yeah. No other changes to the Markham Hill Plan District are proposed of any significance, and if we want to get into details, I'll ask Shannon to come up and talk about those, but generally it's just to accommodate those properties. North Interstate is a plan district where we've applied the inclusionary housing provisions. We've converted existing housing bonuses to an IH approach. I'm sorry, in North Interstate, rather, I skipped ahead in a slide. We're applying the inclusionary housing provisions, and we're providing a bonus for inclusionary housing consistent with the IH approach. There was several areas in the North Interstate Plan District that has a mapped FAR of 4:1, and to be consistent with the areas that are base zoned around there, where there's no provision in the plan district about the floor area, we're including a 1-to-1 bonus offset. Most of the areas that are adjacent that aren't specified are zoned RH with a base of 4-to-1 and an opportunity of an additional 1-to-1 to offset the inclusion. So the areas that are currently mapped with a 4-to-1 FAR are given a 1-to-1 offset. So some of those zones are CM3, some of them are CS, depending on where they're located, but it would bring them all in line with the allowances in RH in this area, and would be consistent with the approach we took prior to the inclusionary housing in that plan district. Northwest, we're doing several different things there. It's a fairly complex one, and we may hear testimony on that. We are applying the inclusionary housing provisions. There's an existing housing bonus that exists in Northwest, and we're proposing to convert that to the IH approach as opposed to the multi-tiered approach that it has right now. So I think it's a simplification of that approach. We're applying the retail and residential use limitations in the EG and the CM3 zones that are consistent with the current EX limitations in that plan district. There were several areas that were, if you'll recall, that are zoned EX in the Northwest Plan District. There were limitations that are applied to both of those retail and residential uses. And as part of the comp plan update, we remapped some of those EG and we remapped some of them CM3, but we're going to apply the existing EX limitations to the EG and the CM3 zones so that we maintain the existing and are consistent with the way we've applied the plan district to the new zones. So we're maintaining the regulations is the bottom line in this plan district. And we've also amended the master plan transportation criteria to be consistent with our approach citywide in terms of transportation approval criteria. South Auditorium Plan District, you touched on this in the central city, but a portion of this is outside of the central city. So we are proposing to amend the map such that we apply base zone floor area ratios in this area. This is the current map that shows a 3-to-1 floor area ratio proposed. That area is all going to be zoned to CM3, which, as you recall, has a base FAR of 3-to-1 and then has a bonus FAR up to 5-to-1. So we're proposing just to apply the base zone here at the CM3 in this area so that it would have the ability to have the 3-to-1 and the 5-to-1. St. John's Plan District, we have a number of changes. We're applying allowances and limitations of the current EX zone to the new CM3 zone. So similar to Northwest, we're applying like regulations to the new zone. We're applying limitations on housing in the EG zone in the Riverfront Subdistrict, consistent with our base zone approach. We have a special provision in St. John's that allows for live-work in the area that is north and west of the St. John's Bridge. It's the area around the old Columbia Sportswear facility on that side. And the St. John's Plan District had a special provision that would allow some live-work in the EG zone by right. We're maintaining that, but we're modifying it a little bit to be more specific to live-work. And then we were amending a height map in St. John's to be more consistent with the base zone approach, and I'll show you that in a moment. This height map in the St. John's Plan District had height map bonus allowances here, and this area were both zoned CN2 back in the old, prior to the comp plan. And CN2, if you recall, has a very low height limit of 30 feet, and these provisions allowed you to go up to 45 feet in this area or 55 feet in this other area if you were providing housing as part of your development. Those zones have been replaced by the CM2 zone, which has a base height limit of 45 feet and allows you to go to 55 feet in certain circumstances. So we're removing these height limits here because 45 feet would be allowed by right in the base zone. Because St. John's is an area that wouldn't be subject to the 55-foot allowance that is applied in the mixed-use urban center designations. We're maintaining the 55 feet height limit in this particular area to make sure that folks know that they can go up to 55 feet. In the conditional use section, 815, we're making a number of changes repetitively to amend for that transportation approval criteria, as I mentioned earlier in Northwest. This transportation approval criteria places further emphasis on evaluation of a whole number of factors, not just transportation, vehicular performance, and it looks at availability of other modes and clarifies several different evaluation factors. I can ask Eric to go into that, Eric Engstrom, if you have more questions about that particular one. So that's the bulk of the Title 33 amendments. A lot of them are technical, but the plan districts, I think, have some nuance to them you might be interested in. I do want to highlight the other city titles that we're amending so you're aware of them. One that you'll be particularly interested in, I think, is Title 11 trees. And again, you do have a recommendation to make to council on this. The Title 11 currently exempts from the tree requirements the CS and the CM zones in terms of trees and development situations on site. BPS staff briefed the Urban Forestry Commission back in April about this and talked to them about their thoughts on this, and we outlined 3 scenarios that we were considering for code amendments here to offset the fact that CS and CM will be out of the zoning code, and how do we replace those. So one approach was to exempt the CM2 and the CM3 zones in inner neighborhoods, and the thinking behind that approach was CM2 and CM3 are generally replacements for the CS and CM zones. We've used those to replace CS and CM in inner neighborhoods. A couple of the characteristics of CS and CM and why they were exempted in the first place is they allowed 100% lot coverage and they had no landscaping requirement at all. Other zones will still be exempt in the tree code that have 100% lot coverage and require no landscaping. In the new code, as you'll recall, the CM zones actually do require landscaping, 15% landscaping. In inner neighborhoods, that can be reduced by using the urban green options that you may recall we discussed. And those urban green options would allow you to go to 0 on-site landscaping if you provided an eco roof over a majority of your building that had a large footprint, or you could reduce your 15% landscaping by providing a large canopy tree or taking some other approaches. So we talked to the Forestry Commission about potentially substituting those zones in inner neighborhoods for the CS and CM zones. We also talked about, as another option, exempting areas that were in the center's Main Street overlay zone. You remember the M overlay zone were areas that we applied to the core of centers around town, and those were the areas that we wanted to have develop as the most kind of urban centers of neighborhood activity within centers. So we felt those were areas that could be candidates for this. They weren't a direct replacement for the CS and CM zones, but they have certain characteristics that are similar. And the third option, which we were asked to explore, was to just completely remove the CS and CM exemptions and not replace them. And the Urban Forestry Commission expressed initial support for option 3. It provides for broader application of tree preservation and tree mitigation opportunities throughout the city, and they saw that as the direction that they felt was appropriate to go. And so what we're proposing is to actually do that option 3. We did some analysis for them, and I can show you more of the analysis about the different areas if you'd like, but I will walk you through just a couple of slides. So these are the areas that, with the CS and CM zones, would currently be exempted from tree requirements. So this is showing largely the central city areas, which will remain exempted, and the employment and industrial areas along the riverfront. But removing the CS and CM zones results in removing those areas from many of the main streets from a zone exemption. So those go away. So again, central city, industrial areas, and gateways still would be exempt from the tree codes. The reason and when we talked to the Urban Forestry Commission, the reason that they were supportive of this is that certain types of development would still be exempt from the tree preservation requirements required by the tree code and would have a potentially reduced requirement in terms of tree planting and tree mitigation. And those are outlined here, and I'll just outline them for you. Basically, Section 1150.040, Tree Preservation Standards, says that the standards would apply, basically it exempts sites that are 5,000 square feet or less, or that have 85% lot coverage, building coverage on a lot, or proposed building coverage on a lot. So you'd be exempt from the tree preservation standards if you're developing a very urban building or you have a very small lot. So they felt that that was adequate protection to allow for urban development in those key areas where we were proposing large buildings, but not exempting areas where folks were not proposing a high degree of building coverage. So they felt it met both kind of concerns. 1150.050 tree density standards requires that you plant trees or plant on site 15% of the site in commercial zones. So that's the reciprocal side of the 85, but also allows an option B, which is a sliding scale that allows you to, as I read it, reduce the standard, the amount of area that you have to mitigate trees on or plant trees on based on how much building coverage you're proposing. So it really is related to how urban the building, how urban the condition will be and how big the building will be and how much of the site area it covers would determine how much tree planting you would have. And this is already built into the tree code. So again, we're proposing to go with just exempting CS and CM and taking that out of the code. Title 18 is the noise code, and it also references a number of zones and relates the noise levels that are allowed between zones by zone. And what we are doing is trying to do a straight replacement for the most similar zones in this particular code. So if we had low intensity neighborhood commercial zones, we substituted the CM1 zone. If we had medium intensity zones, the CS and CM zones, we substituted CM2. And if we had higher intensity zones, the CX zone, for instance, we substituted CM3. There are a couple of exceptions to this, and I think they're significant, and you should just be aware of them. It assigns the CI1, which is the CI2 Campus Institute 2, and the CM3 zone to the commercial use zone category, which is has a slightly lower, if you will, noise standard allowed than the current EX zone, which is lumped into the industrial kind of categories. So for areas outside of the central city, the noise generation threshold between the commercial zone and the adjacent residential zone will be for CM3 zones will be more consistent with commercial allowances than it is currently. Right now, EX can generate a little bit more noise, if you will, than a commercial zone can. So we're outside of the central city, we'd be making the areas that are currently EX and becoming CM3 consistent with the other commercial zones. That makes sense to folks? And I can show you some tables to show you how that works if you have further questions about it. It also assigns the CR, the commercial residential zone, and the CI1, which is the small scale campus institutional zone, to the residential use category because those zones are applied in the context of low density, generally low density residential areas. And then finally, Title 32 deals with the sign code. And again, we tried to do a substitution, almost one for one if we could, to apply the same scale of sign regulations to zones that are applied now, substituting the small scale CM1 zone for the neighborhood commercial zones that we have now, substituting the CM2 zone and the CI2 zone for the medium scale CS and CM zones, and assigning the CM3 zone to the larger scale EX and CX allowances. Again, CR and CI1 would be applied residential standards, which are slightly lower scale in some cases, but also allow small scale commercial in other cases. The bottom line is for CM1, they get the smallest sign allowances. CM2 get a medium-sized sign allowances similar to what CS allows today. And CM3 would get a larger sign allowance similar to what EX gets right now. Because of the zone changing that happened as part of the comp plan, there are going to be folks that gain and some folks that lose sign allowance as part of this process. So we made a lot of shifts from a CS zone, which would have a medium sign allowance now, to CM3 as part of the comp plan. So they'll be granted a larger sign allowance. We also made some shifts from general commercial, CG, to CM1 in some locations. Those folks will have a smaller sign allowance in the future. So there's some things that will happen there. We've talked to folks in BDS about their concerns about that. There is a larger sign code update that they are planning later on, but that's not quite ready for prime time yet. So this is seen as kind of an interim solution, but we understand that there may be some folks that have reductions or greater allowances provided to them. The other thing I want to note about this is we have contacted Venture Portland and asked them to kind of make their business partners and constituents aware that the sign codes could be changing. So we may hear from those folks as well. So with that, I think I'll open it to questions.
Are those who get a signage reduction, do they get grandfathered in with what? I mean, obviously, you're not going to go make them change their current sign, but should they need to update it? Do they get to use the same base size?
With some limitations, they can change. My understanding is that they can change the content of the sign, but they can't change a whole lot else about the sign. And I can give you more detail on that for the next time we meet. So I'd be happy to answer any questions or go dive into a little detail. I've got some resource slides. If you ask the right questions, I might be able to point you to it.
Questions? Chris?
So I was scanning through the proposal and came across what's a trigger word for me, which is level of service. So there are a number of instances where there are approval criteria, and I'll just find one here as an example. My tablet ever boots up here. So page 449 for one, this is the commercial parking facilities. And this is, I think, boilerplate that occurs in like 24 places in the plan. And the language is the transportation system is capable, this is approval criteria for some kind of change. Transportation system is capable of supporting proposed facility in addition to the existing uses in the area. Evaluation factors include street capacity, level of service, connectivity, transit availability, et cetera. Mm-hmm. So we just finished negotiating with PBOT for the TSP that we were going to limit the use of level of service to safety factors. Because level of service is a standard that basically favors single occupancy vehicles, and we put them at the bottom of our transportation hierarchy. So my question is, this seems to, and I did look at the old language that was there before, which is a little bit shorter, but somewhat similar in spirit. I think your new language is more multimodal, but the idea is that PBOT is going to, as part of rulemaking for the TSP, develop new multimodal criteria for land use review. So I'm wondering if this shouldn't reference the outcome of that work as opposed to sort of plunging ahead with a list of evaluation factors, but should instead rely on what's going to be developed through the TSP process. I've got Eric's interest.
Yeah, I'm glad. I was just going to call him up here, so he's better equipped to speak to this than I am.
Eric Engstrom, Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. What's happening with Barry's proposal here is similar language was adopted identical language was adopted in several other chapters of the code with the Periodic Review Task 5. So really what Barry was doing was cutting and pasting what we already adopted last year to make it cover all the other similar situations. And I think we're in this point, Chris, where the change we're making makes it more multimodal, as you said, and that was our intent. We didn't yet feel, at least last year, we weren't yet prepared to remove the words level of service from it, although that's clearly the directionality of the discussion. So this was mostly about being consistent with what we already adopted last year in similar chapters.
Right.
I think that's the conversation we're headed towards. It's really a matter of timing, and is this the right project to open that? Or we're a little bit cornered still because the state and Metro still have requirements that we use that. And so it's a legal question, I guess, about whether we could safely remove it from our code without them having acted first. But I think that's a fair question to raise.
Right, which I think we sort of navigated with the TSP language, which is why I'm wondering if we can't leverage that.
Yeah, I guess I would say, sure, you could have that conversation at this point. If you change this language, I would want you to go back and change the language you adopted in the other chapters with Task 5 so we don't have a consistency issue.
Well, and the other question I have is, why do we have this several dozen places in the code rather than putting it once and have a reference to that everywhere else?
I guess that's a Shannon question. It's just that there are a lot of different land use reviews that reference adequacy of transportation services, and that's just the way it's arranged in the code.
Okay, well, I'm meeting tomorrow with PBOT about some of the TSP issues, so I'm going to raise this, and maybe we can all get together before we come back here for the hearing.
Yeah, I think that's a good next step.
Thanks.
Eli, did you have your hand up? And then just give me put your hands up after that. Okay, great.
A couple questions. One is for the affordable commercial. Can that, at least some summary of that, come to us before we vote on this project for those involved?
Yeah, and let me see if we would plan to have Portland Development Commission staff at the meeting on 10/24, so at the hearing, and definitely, available at the work sessions. And we'll definitely have something for you, at least an outline. I've asked them for an outline of the criteria, yes. I think they still need a bit more time to fully develop that, so we'll see that moving forward, but you'll get at least a preview of what they're working on. Okay. And again, hopefully, I think we have a meeting in another week or so, a couple of the planning and sustainability commissioners will have some more information as well.
Okay. And the question I have is my favorite new zone, the commercial residential zone. When I've sent some email to staff on this, a lot of these inches here relate to the rollout of the new commercial zoning designations, and that was a zone that was invented with the commercial mixed-use project. I like the zone because it deals with existing conditions. And I'm optimistic that it can be used in more places as well. And as we did the mixed-use zoning project, we had some level of discussion about maybe having a lower bar to entry for this zone. And I'm wondering whether that's something that could be addressed in this code update. And I know that there may be some accusations of scope creep on this. But I think that it's a new invented zone, and I am fearful that it'll never be used if the only way to get into it, or unlikely to be used if, I went through right now to get the CR zoning from a residentially zoned property, you would need to go through a comp plan amendment and zoning code change. And I've done that once before. It cost $50,000, and you don't know whether it's going to be approved or not. And I suspect that would be a barrier to entry to anyone who had, for example, a residentially zoned site on an arterial or something who wanted to run a business out of it. So I guess I had hoped that there might be some way of getting into that zone that would have a land use process, probably a zone change, but you would not also have to do a comp plan update, or some other mechanism so that the fees and process would be more appropriate to the size of a request. So I guess the question is whether this is something that staff could address with this code update to create a lower barrier to entry for the CR zone.
And with regard to that, yeah, I think our thought was that, the CR zone could be applied in more situations over time, similar to that. I do think it may be, we've talked a little bit about this, a bit of a outside of the scope of the project to actually try to work through that mechanism. We could look at, I'd like to take a little more time to look at what would be involved in that, though, to make that happen. It may require a comprehensive plan amendment to make that happen, because I don't think CR is currently a zone that would be allowed in one of the residential comp plan designations. So I have to kind of look at that, but we can come back to you and let you know what the process might be or what might be entailed in that.
Well, closing thought on it is that was exactly the question raised when we introduced the zone back with the mixed-use project, and it's fair to raise it now. This is a wonky and small enough thing that it's hard for me to foresee any future zoning project where something like this would get addressed. So, and perhaps if not this code, I'd like to know when. It's a detail-oriented, big picture thing, and this code project does deal with some detail-oriented, big picture rollout issues. It's hard to imagine something like that motivating a code update in the future. So that's why I'm proposing to do it with this one. Thanks.
I just have a question and then perhaps a request, depending on the answer to the question. Using the example of the affordable commercial, and then your thought is to take some of it into administrative rules.
Mm-hmm.
Is the plan to have a reference within the zoning code that says, go check out the administrative rules?
And I believe that is.
Or does it?
I think it does, yeah, I think it does.
Even better.
I don't know
Okay.
that it says administrative rule per se, but it does refer to the Prosper Portland Development Commission Affordable Commercial Program. So, and it specifies that the project would have to comply with the requirements of that program.
Okay. And what made me think of this is the IH program. I don't believe in what's published today references one to the administrative rules on Portland Housing Bureau site. Maybe I've missed it, but that might be something I would suggest that we get in there just at some point. I don't know. I mean, it seems like this would be the time.
Okay, so can you just repeat that again? You would like to have a reference to the standards of the zone, or
there's administrative rules within that's run by the Portland Housing Bureau that are tied to obviously implementing IH,
right.
And you got to kind of put the two together, two of those pieces together to really be able to work through the code.
Right.
And I do not believe there's a reference right now, and if so, I've missed it, that kind of ties or tells one, go to the Portland Housing Bureau's website and find the rules for IH. So it might be helpful.
Okay.
It just is as somebody's going through, as somebody who has gone through and is trying to apply the code, it's helped that I know that it's there, but I don't have staff that seems to have found it.
So let me talk to our code editor and
Perfect.
find out how that would work, and see if that makes sense or how we would deal with that one.
Perfect, thank you. So sorry, Andres, and then Ben, and then we'll go from there.
I just have a information question that could be answered offline. As you talked about the density bonuses, I remember in St. John's there was an area where originally it had been set to offer a density bonus if housing was built, and then you have the density bonuses offered through IH. Just out of interest, I was curious what the parameters are when establishing density bonuses on what you can require in exchange for a density bonus. So in these cases, we used IH and the existence of housing in a project, but I'm wondering in the realm of what's possible, what can be used as a trade-off with a density bonus?
And I can partially answer that question right now. So the question was, what can you use in well, we've had, I guess I would say that the range is pretty broad, but over the last 2 years or so, the focus the City of Portland and on the zoning code bonuses has really kind of narrowed considerably. We had a host of bonuses in the Central City Plan District, if I remember correctly, ranging from providing, bike parking or showers or multiple things that I probably am missing a ton of them. But I think a lot of them were not seen as effective, or they were seen as maybe too generous for the return. And given conditions in the City of Portland right now, I think the goal was to narrow that to a strategic focus on some key bonuses that really provided the public benefit that we think makes the most sense. And housing was the one that really rose to the top of the list. Similarly, in the mixed-use zones, when we did this project, some of the members of the commission were around at that time when we were talking about multiple bonuses. We had bonuses potentially for open space and plazas, and affordable commercial was one of them. Affordable housing was another one, and different elements. And over time, again, similar to what has happened with Central City, we kind of winnowed that list down and really said strategically we wanted to focus on housing and affordable commercial space in this particular zones. But indeed, we've had a much broader array of zones in the past, or bonus options in the past.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think the only thing I want to verify then is, are there any legal parameters or precedent that kind of puts sidelines on what can be attached to a density bonus, or is it seen as an incentive and thus kind of open-ended depending on the city's priorities?
Yeah. I don't know if anybody from the city attorney's office is in there. But in my experience, we had not applied parameters like that. They were seen as pure incentives to provide some kind of a good, and we tried to look at what a reasonable exchange for that public good was.
Ben, then Jeff.
I have a background question on the Title 11 trees. During the preparation of the three alternative scenarios presented to the Urban Forestry Commission for the CM2 and CM3 zones, I'm assuming that all these three alternatives relate to what happens within the property line of a certain property. Have you considered alternatives that looked at improvements within the right-of-way as part, perhaps as frontage improvements?
Yeah. We didn't look at right-of-way. That's dealt with separately, I believe, in the tree code. So we didn't look at that as a trade-off for this. I mean, we took kind of a very focused and strategic approach because we were dealing with a very small problem where we had CS and CM as an exempted set of zones that were not going to exist anymore. And we didn't really explore much beyond that. So again, I believe that there are some standards for right-of-way that exist separately from these, and I don't believe that the exemptions apply to right-of-way at all. But I can double-check for you.
No, my question was if in lieu of...
Oh, in lieu of on-site?
Right.
Again, we didn't do that, and I guess if you've got some ideas or questions about that, maybe we could pursue those and follow up on that, but we did not look at that.
Okay, maybe we can follow up offline.
Jeff?
There. Just follow up on a couple of comments other commissioners have made, and I'll start with Eli's on the commercial residential. I've also had clients over the years that had what struck me as reasonable zone change comp plan amendments, and when you show them it's $50,000 and it takes a year and you're not sure what you're going to get, a lot of them very quickly back off. I preface that to say I agree with Eli, and I would push you, Susan's staff. I think you could come up with a pretty reasonable tweak to put into this package to accommodate what Eli was talking about. Perhaps you simply say CR from a comprehensive plan amendment is allowed in any commercial or residential zone, which would then set up an ability to go right to a zone change and not incur the expense and the hassle of a comp plan amendment. That may not be the right approach, but I don't see it as, I suspect Eric could sit down in half an hour and figure out a couple of code languages tweaks he could put in. So again, if there's a real hesitancy to do it in here, okay, but I really push you to think through, as Eli said, it's a nuance that may never show up again in another code project. So I would urge you to kind of think through. I know it's not technically a code reconciliation, but I think it could be characterized. And same thing on Kat's issue, which I've raised before. I raised it when we did the TDM issue. We have things in our zoning code that their real implementation is in somebody's administrative rule, whether it's PBOT or somebody else. I think it would be really, really, really helpful if the zoning code said, like in the IH section, footnote, see Title 33 and the administrative rules. And quite frankly, you can't find those administrative rules on inclusionary housing. I mean, they're not posted online anywhere. So I realize that's not our bureau, but I would think anything we can do throughout the code where we have zoning regulations that get implemented through somebody's administrative rule, we really need to make it easy, or at least flag it for readers of the code. Here's where you find it. And by God, if it's not posted, here's the phone number of the director. Call them. Let's not hide the ball on people trying to work through our difficult code. So again, if we can begin to do that whenever we're touching the code, who's got the administrative rule that implements this? And my last piece was on Title 11. as your representative on DRAC, I can tell you a frequent conversation at the DRAC meetings are people's frustration with Title 11 and trees, and I'm not always sure what exactly the problem is, but I do know a lot of builders who have to deal with Title 11 have lots of frustration. So going to this issue about we're no longer going to exempt CM2 and CM3, and you mentioned, you outlined 3 options, and you said urban forestry picked the option, no surprise, of let's remove the exemption. Barry, it would help me to get a little understanding of what does that mean? What kinds of developments would be affected by this? Maybe you could come up with a couple of examples. Okay. Or has anyone looked at it from the other side of the coin and say, here's a desirable project, small commercial project, that's going to have a problem meeting that under today's exemption is good to go, but suddenly if they're no longer exempted, what does it mean? Because I have no way of evaluating what are we trading off. You made it sound like there's not a lot of area, but if I'm happen to be one of those property owners who's affected, I'd just like to understand a little bit more. Give us some way to balance whether we agree with urban forestry that yes, let's go for the removing the exemption, or some middle ground position.
Okay.
Thank you.
And again, just in response to that, I think I can outline for you the situations where the way we're proposing it, folks would be exempted, or where they would have a reduced tree requirements. And I can also show you approximate acreages involved in that, so I can show you some of that.
I don't have a specific bit of information, just some way to evaluate what's the impact of exemption. I don't know how you want to best do it, but the way you suggested maybe works fine.
Okay. Well, that'll at least give you some insight into it, so I can look at that.
Okay,
Michelle.
so clarification. So is the comprehensive plan the document that says which zones implement which comprehensive plan designations? So that we couldn't actually do this CR thing here, we'd have to be opening up the comp plan?
Yeah, I believe that's the case, and that was why I responded that way to Eli, is that I do think we have to crack open the comprehensive plan to do that. So that's my understanding, yeah.
Quick comment. Fortunately, we have a comp plan reconciliation coming up right behind it, so maybe it could fit in there.
Eli?
Maybe this is a simpler approach to what I'm trying to get at. I'm just looking at the fee schedule for land use reviews, and there is a tier A schedule for simultaneous comp plan map amendments with zone map amendments that costs $14,000, and there may be a way just to list some conditions to use that process, whereas to do a simple zone change is over $17,000. And if you're doing a comp, so there might be a way to achieve what I'm trying to get to by just adjusting the fee schedule so that it qualifies for a tier A process. I don't know where the fee schedule is baked into the zoning code, but if it is at all, is it outside?
It's BDS, yeah. It's BDS.
Okay, so anyway, that might be, in terms of what I'm trying to achieve, that might be another way of achieving it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions? I have a few, so bear with me as I go through my notes. Shouldn't be too much, though. Piggybacking on what Jeff was asking you about, trying to get my head wrapped around the effects of some things, similar notion came up when you were discussing buffer overlay. Mm-hmm. And really, I guess my question kind of I wrote down here is, so what are we talking about? How much land area, buildable land area, is now being affected? What's the percentage? And so maybe that's the same way to look at the landscape thing is 2% of the site now reduced because of in buildable land area due to the new requirements or whatever.
Okay.
But it's, again, and maybe there's nothing here in the buffet overlay because it's just a trade. But I wasn't following it quite that way. So.
And maybe it would make sense to just bring Steve up and highlight that before we finish up here to see if that answers your question. But let's go ahead and work through your other questions.
Sure. I need my glasses. Actually, Steve, why don't you go ahead, and then I'll keep going through seeing if we've answered my other ones.
So it varies a lot, the buffer overlay width between...
Microphone, please. Thank you.
And then I've got that chart in here as well, Steve, so if we want to look
The buffer overlay, you can't see it very well, but it varies a lot. It's sparsely created across the city, and and it may be 25 feet wide. It's typically 50 feet wide. In some places, it's 200 to 300 feet wide. The limitations that it puts on that extra width are very limited, although when you look at some of those sites, they are often treed areas, landscaped areas, and it may give neighbors the impression that they cannot be developed. But essentially, all of those sites can be developed to setback standards that are 10 feet to 20-foot width. The only limitation that applies on entire sites are for outdoor use activities, which is it's being changed to a 25-foot setback for outdoor use activities in, for example, industrial zones. There are some, in the commercial zones, there are some outdoor use activities that are just allowed, restaurants and others, and then they have a 25-foot setback, and the proposal is to have a 25-foot setback in the large industrial zones as well. That's the, it's not really development area that is limited, but that level of activity in the wider zones. And then to replace the code requirements with, that are in the buffer overlay with the citywide requirements, it has a much bigger effect because it applies citywide in all cases in the EG zones or the I zones that abut a residential zone. So there's a minor code change on the set. Oh, you put that in there.
Hard to read at this scale.
There's a relatively minor code change on the setback for the small lot zones, the EG1, IG1, for buildings that are bigger than 1 story, up to 45 feet. Right now, there's a sliding scale setback that goes from 8 feet to, I think it's 14 feet, and it's being reduced to a 10-foot setback to be consistent with all the commercial zones, and particularly consistent with the commercial employment zone, which is similar. It allows medium-scale industrial uses and pretty large-scale commercial uses. So that's the effect. That's probably the biggest effect on developability, but it's hard to estimate between sites and between zones.
Okay, I will spend more time focusing on that as I read and probably have more questions.
I can share this table, I think, probably with the commission.
That'd be great.
We'll have, that'll be posted online. Well,
if you could use the mic, that'd be great, Barry.
If it helps, I could walk through that briefly. The buffer overlay does 5 things that are those gray areas, those horizontal lines in there. Most of them are already addressed citywide. On the bottom, radio frequency transmission facilities and offsite impacts, we do the same thing citywide. For parking, and the middle one for parking lot driveway area, we apply the same parking lot standards citywide across zones, so generally the same requirements apply. It's only really in the building setback and landscaping that goes with building setback in the top row, and then the setback for outdoor activities, either outdoor storage or outdoor display or outdoor work activities.
So I guess,
really see a change.
I guess where I'm disconnecting, Steve, is if you're changing a setback, that changes buildable area. So that's kind of what I'm trying to wrap my head around. I think, I'll tell you what, I'm going to spend some time getting my head into getting you a better, clearer question, and then I'll send it through if it's still kind of bothering or
I'll come back with answers.
Causing questions for me. Thank you. Any other questions on that? No. And then, and this is a very pointed question with, and because I know it's stated, and you and I talked about this in the briefing, Macadam Plan District. If I remember correctly, the base zone there states a maximum, and I'm trying to remember, I think it's height. And so the Macadam Plan District has maximum height standards. And so if you go to apply IH, even though you maybe get the extra 1-to-1, you really can't do anything with it. and I could be speaking wrong, I got to go back to it. I guess really where I'm going with the question is it's kind of back to my earlier question about I'm trying to wrap my head around, are we really able to use the incentive we were trying to provide for IH in these planned district zones? And if not, where are we not able to truly use the incentive so that we can analyze, okay, how do we address that?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
So do you want me to go ahead and respond to any of that right now? Or?
You don't have to.
Okay.
We can talk about that later.
Well, and I can tell you, Macadam is an unusual case in that it does have a low floor area ratio built in of 2 to 1. So I think that's, I'd have to go back and look at the height limits. I don't recall them.
And it
off the
might
top
be
of my
far.
head.
I was kind of debating whether it was far or height.
Well, and I think that floor area ratio is achievable within the height limits that are allowed there. The Macadam bump that we're providing, the offset, is a 0.5 in that particular case. So that was trying to be consistent with low FAR zones where we have a very small incentive or offset for inclusionary housing. It seems like it's doable. We should look at that more carefully, and I can bring you more detail on that. In the other plan districts, I think that the height limits allow the utilization of the FAR by and large.
Okay, then I'll redirect and say, then look, let's understand the FAR, what the incentive you've actually given and if it's off. So granted, if they're at 2 to 1 and you're only given a 0.5, I question whether that's really an incentive, which means if you stopped all housing development in Macadam from happening because they're now required to comply with the IH, is my concern. And so what my question would be back to this group is, does that mean if we can't give them more FAR that makes sense as an incentive, do they not have IH applied, perhaps? I don't know what the answer is, but I just want to make sure we're kind of consistent with the incentive that we're applying across the neighborhoods.
Yep. Okay.
Maybe they don't all work. Some people would argue that, but at least it's consistent across the board how it may or may not work.
Well, and I think with Macadam, one of the key questions is that base FAR.
It's very low.
The right
I agree.
one, yeah.
Okay.
But that's where our starting point was to assume that things are what they are and they're adopted the way they're adopted, and we were trying to be pretty strategic about where we made any substantive changes.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that approach, that we shouldn't make a big substantive change to FAR there. Now I'm like, okay, have we just really done something else by the fact that we applied IH in a zone and we can't really give them an incentive to offset it? And then my only other just really remark is, and we already talked about this as well, is an encouragement to BDS to sooner rather than later update the signage code. I know from experience that that's not being consistently applied, and I think it's causing confusion to people in the community. So would love to get that on their work list. That's all I have. Are there any other comments or questions? Sorry, Teresa, I forgot you were over here. I assume you would have poked me if you had something. Okay. It doesn't look like we have anything else. Thank you very much,
Great.
Barry.
All right,
Appreciate
thank
all
you.
your time. And with that, we are adjourned.
See you in a
Thank
couple
you.
weeks.